Episode 1. After the emotionally charged massacre at the old school, the battlefield where Don Seun once fought with his two closest comrades, now, one is in the hospital with no idea when he'll wake up, another is gone without a chance to say goodbye, and as for our main character, while his mind stays cold as ice, his heart is bleeding drop by drop. And so, Don Seun, the frail hero with a mind as powerful as a Category 12 storm, decided to reset his life. He transferred to a new school, starting over with the hope of living a normal life like any other student. You know, the kind of life where you go to school, eat noodles and study. The new school is called Woonjang High. The name might sound cute, like a raccoon opening a home for cuddles. In reality, it's a front for a gangster den disguised as a high school, where students don't bring laptops to class, they bring fists. The teachers, as soon as they finish teaching, they head straight out, knowing the longer they stay, the more likely they'll get dragged into drama. The moment he stepped through the school gates, wind blowing his hair like he was in a movie, except this really is a Korean drama. Don Seun looked around and silently hoped there wouldn't be any crazy people here, so he could finally have a peaceful life. But life is never that easy for the main character. After just 3 days of classes, he realized if you're not a little crazy at this school, you simply can't survive. In the hallway lingered the smell of cigarettes, sweat, and that classic bully combo, all mixing like layers of perfume, soap, and most notably, there was Choi Hyoman. He was the school's top thug, the ringleader who ran a shady business selling phones of unknown origin, phones that students had stolen and brought in. This guy always looked like he'd been sucking on lemons since he was a kid, and he walked around as if he was ready to pick a fight with any tree that dared to grow crooked. His real brother's name is Seo Jun-tae. He was the unlucky good kid, born to play the role of the regretful side character in an action movie. At first, Jun-tae was a gentle student, and his part-time job was delivering milk to the younger members of Choi Hyoman's gang. But day after day, he was pushed around so much that he ended up becoming the guy who borrowed classmates' phones for others. No one wants to do that, well, except for that boss guy. But is anyone else really that nice? Who would want to do that? But living in Woonung, you have to choose, be a victim, a bully, or the one who breaks into lockers. And then one day, as if it were fate, Jun-tae was given the task of stealing Don Seun's phone. Before class started, Jun-tae received the bag of phones from the homeroom teacher so he could smoothly return them to everyone at the end of the day. After receiving the bag, he slipped into the restroom, sat there quietly for a while, and finally decided to take Seun's phone and put it in his pocket. Class went on as usual, and then at the end of the day, Seun came to get his phone but couldn't find it anywhere. Unfortunately for Jun-tae, he was the second to last to leave the classroom and also to get his phone back, right after Seun, so Seun questioned him. Jun-tae tried to explain, going in circles with excuses, but to his surprise, Seun didn't say much and just walked away. So Jun-tae went and handed Seun's phone over to Yeoman's group of underclassmen, and once that was done, he left. When he got to the school hallway, he ran into Seun and tried to start a conversation, but Seun ignored him. With a guilty conscience, Jun-tae chased after Seun, trying to justify himself and explain how he felt. But when faced with Jun-tae, Seun stayed cold and distant. He didn't yell, punch, or kick. He just calmly turned to Jun-tae and said a single sentence that made you want to disappear from embarrassment. "You're a coward." Oh my gosh. That sentence was like a god-level combo attack that completely destroyed Jun-tae's pride and woke up something deep inside him. That night, just like every other night, Seun came home and took a sedative to help him sleep, but he still couldn't fall asleep. So our main character decided to catch the earliest bus to the hospital, where Soo-ho was still lying silently. He went to visit his friend, partly because he wanted to confide in the person he felt guilty towards. Seun was tormented because he had called Jun-tae a coward today, but deep down, he felt that he was the real coward, not anyone else. Seun hoped his friend would wake up, to the point that he stubbornly kept texting him, even though Soo-ho was still lying there, not replying to any messages. The next morning, when he arrived at school, he saw Jun-tae being bullied again on the stairs. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but remember how he himself had been bullied mercilessly at his old school. Then he imagined himself pulling out a pen and standing up to the bullies like a hero. But that was just his imagination, and our main character snapped back to reality after a few shouts from the bullies. You'd think he was about to do something cool, but instead, he just walked past Jun-tae as if nothing had happened. That afternoon, Jun-tae came to see Seun and confessed that he had stolen his phone. Then, a rather emotional scene unfolded between Seun and Jun-tae. Basically, Jun-tae wanted Seun to teach him how not to be a coward anymore. Jun-tae genuinely wanted to turn his life around and start over, but someone as disillusioned as Seun didn't really care and just walked away. That evening, as Seun was trudging home, he happened to witness Choi Hyoman meeting up with his gang to continue their business. It was a hideout packed with second-hand phones. Turns out, Hyoman was running short on supply, so he came to beg the boss of the warehouse to let him delay this week's shipment. This shady guy is seriously something else. Juntae had been thinking a lot about what Seon said regarding making a change. So the next morning, he brought pliers and cut open Hyoman's phone locker, taking back the phones he had stolen. He took it upon himself to apologize to the people he'd stolen from, returned their phones properly, and even threw in a bonus power bank. That morning, when Seon arrived at class and saw her phone along with a short note from Juntae, she was a bit moved, though she still kept a cold expression. But life isn't that simple. When Hyoman found out, he was absolutely furious. Their second-hand goods operation was exposed, their reputation took a hit, and his underling dared to betray him. Unable to accept it, he went looking for Juntae and gave him a beating. Now Juntae bravely endured the beating from this thug, all while Seon watched. Juntae was repeatedly kicked in the head, blood streaming everywhere. It looked incredibly painful. Witnessing this bullying scene brought back memories for Seon of when she was bullied. Juntae was punched, kicked, and dragged like a punching bag, but everyone just watched, knowing anyone who intervened would get the same treatment. In the crowd, Don Seon sat with his hands still in his uniform pockets, his gaze as cold as Dalat waters in January. While most were terrified, he looked as if calmly calculating the wind direction and spin force. The crowd fell silent and every punch sounded as clear as a school drum on opening day. Suddenly Don Seon stepped forward, leaving everyone stunned. Because someone actually dared to stand up to the school's top bully. Seon coldly warned the fool to stop acting out and to know his own limits. Episode 2. Don Seon was still trying to live his student life quietly, like a fridge in the basement, but the people around him just wouldn't let him be. Early in the morning, before he could even finish breakfast, Baku's gang was already causing a scene because they weren't allowed to compete. The guy in the blue shirt from the group was so mad he could barely stand it, and was about to run off to tell the teacher when he suddenly saw a crowd of students rushing off like they were chasing a big sale. Rumor had it there was a new bullying incident, and the main character this time was none other than Hyoman. Lately, that guy's been acting even more aggressive than usual. With Baku not at school, he's been running wild, trying to take over as the boss. Anyone who wants to do anything has to get his permission, or else they'll end up getting grabbed by the collar at the school gate and forced to apologize. The scene shifts to Seon, who happens to walk by and catches Hyoman about to gang up on a weaker student. But before Hyoman could even make a move, Seon had already read his attack and dodged it cleanly, making Hyoman miss his punch right in broad daylight, in front of dozens of students who were basically live streaming the whole thing with their eyes. And when you embarrass a gangster like that, well, there's no need to say more. Hyoman was as furious as if someone had stolen his phone charger. He went berserk, ready to charge at Seon to vent his anger, but just as he was about to strike, the guy in the army green shirt from Baku's group stepped in to stop him. This guy thought Hyoman was an idiot, but Hyoman still acted all crazy. The young man's name was Kotak. Kotak gave Hyoman a warning kick that scared him so much he nearly wet his pants and left in shame. Kotak wanted to introduce himself to Seon, but Seon didn't say a word and just went over to bring glasses to Juntae. This made Kotak pretty annoyed, since he didn't even get a thank you, so he called out to Seon. Seon still coldly thanked the guy who just saved him to make him happy, then took Juntae to the nurse's office. But they couldn't go in, because if the nurse saw Juntae all bruised up, she'd definitely have to file a report. And if there was a report, it would get back to Hyoman, and if Hyoman found out, he'd bring the whole gang over to cause trouble, leading to consequences just like what happened back in 8th grade. So Juntae pulled Seon into a secret room they called the medicine base. The name sounds sneaky, but inside, it's actually pretty cute. They sat there cleaning up the blood, quietly looking at each other in an atmosphere so still it felt like someone's spirit was floating. Before they could exchange a meaningful look, a few students with shiny faces walked in and started asking Juntae dramatic questions like, "Oh wow, why are you so bruised? Who hurt you? Do you need to get a shot or something?" Just hearing them made Seon feel creeped out. He stood up and left in a very salty way. Kotak's whole group was huddled together gossiping about Hyoman when he suddenly showed up like, "I've been standing here since this afternoon. If you guys are so brave, keep talking." Earlier, he had already run into Kotak but only dared to talk big for show, not actually start anything. In short, when it comes to talking tough, he's on par with those fake board chairman types and their endings, but when it comes to action, it's a big fat zero. After Seon rescued Juntae from being locked in the storage room, the two of them suddenly started to develop a strange bond, just like a destined couple in those boy love dramas. Juntae was so touched that he bought vitamins and supplements to repay Seon's kindness. This guy is really thoughtful. Seeing his friend always dozing off, he went all out and got him supplements to help his best buddy sleep more soundly. The next morning, the two guys even sat down to eat together at the same table, looking as affectionate as newlyweds. Seyoon cheerfully thanked Juntae because the medicine he took yesterday worked wonders. He slept so well, it was like he'd just been infused with sweet dreams. While he was at it, Juntae also recommended some multivitamins for his friend to try next. Honestly, looking at his face, you can't help but feel a little suspicious. Does this guy have a hidden agenda? But maybe he's just being genuinely kind, so let's trust him for now. After that, the two young men wandered out to the schoolyard together, sitting down to share innocent, heartfelt conversations about their youth. It felt like Juntae hadn't enjoyed such a peaceful afternoon in ages, as if he could finally relax without worrying about getting ambushed. Just as they were happily soaking up some schoolyard drama, Hyoman suddenly showed up out of nowhere, dropping a piping hot scoop. Kotak has his eyes on you too, so you'd better watch your backs. But life is never that simple. Kotak had already spotted Hyoman getting all chummy with those two softies and started to get suspicious, staring him down as if to say, "Hey, whose side are you on?" Things got even more tangled when Hyoman, bold as ever, marched right up to Kotak and explained, "I'm getting close to Seyoon, because I see a lot of potential in him to be my favorite junior in the future." Meanwhile, on the other side, Seyoon and Juntae were so stressed they decided it was safer to just run away. If they stayed longer, they might have turned to stone from the tension. Near their classroom, Juntae suddenly had to pee and couldn't hold it, so he went to the restroom, but as soon as he stepped in, Hyoman's underlings ambushed him and grabbed him before he could react. As for Hyoman's grandfather, there's nothing more to say. Cool. He barged into Kotak's group's room and trashed the place in no time, as quickly as an ex can change their mind. Seyoon saw his friend hadn't come back to class while the homeroom teacher just sat there unbothered, worrying Seyoon more. Panicking, he grabbed his phone and tried calling, but there was no answer. Then Hyoman's grandfather showed up again, acting innocent, and told Seyoon, "Your best friend's been captured by Kotak, so you'd better hurry and rescue him or you'll miss the perfect timing." Even though Seyoon knew full well that this sneaky scheme was cooked up by Hyoman, he never expected Hyoman to play so dirty. He actually sent his underlings to spread the word all over school that Seyoon was about to have a showdown with Kotak. Basically, this whole intense drama was a devious plot by Hyoman and his crew, all to pit Seyoon and Kotak against each other. In the end, all he had to do was sit back, reap the benefits, and become the final boss of this drama-filled school. Kotak even went out of his way to find Seyoon and Juntae, determined to settle the score over the destruction of his club room. He was already furious, but what really drove him mad was that they had the nerve to use lighter fluid to burn his handsome face. Kotak just stood there, constantly bringing up painful old stories, which made Seyoon lose his temper and brought back all those hurtful memories, just like when your ex blocks you on Facebook. The two hot-headed guys charged at each other, fighting hard. They shouted insults like, "You bastard," but their fists and feet flew harder. Juntae watched from the sidelines like an online spectator. In the middle of the chaotic fight, out of nowhere, Hyoman's grandfather and his crew showed up, uninvited but bringing plenty of drama with them. Turns out, they were planning an ambush, hoping to take everyone down at once and claim the title of school kingpins. So Seyoon and Kotak had to call a truce and form an alliance, reluctantly teaming up to take on Hyoman's gang. Just as Hyoman's grandfather was about to deliver a devastating blow to the kids, a loud shout rang out, freezing everyone for 5 seconds. And the one who showed up to save the day was none other than the legendary Baku, making a dramatic entrance with an epic background track. The moment Hyoman saw Baku's face, he turned pale with fear, like running into a debt collector, immediately tossing his baseball bat to show how cowardly, yet genuinely scared, he was. Seeing this, Baku rushed over and delivered a legendary basketball shot to Hyoman, knocking him flat as if hit by Nacha's finishing move. After that, Baku looked at Seyoon with an expression that seemed familiar, yet as if they'd never met, leaving Seyoon frozen. Episode 3. Baku came over to ask Seyoon a few questions, but this guy played it cool and aloof. His face looked like someone who just lost a bet, and he didn't answer, so Baku had to turn and check on his buddy Kotak's condition instead. Meanwhile, Hyoman's gang of underlings hurried over, desperate to see how their boss was doing. At this point, Baku had barely managed to ask a few questions when Kotak started yelling, blaming him for getting the basketball team suspended. Hearing that, Baku held his head in his hands, blaming himself. Maybe it was that red hair he dyed the other day that brought bad luck and got the team benched. While he sat there, full of regret, Hyoman's underlings suddenly rushed in, planning a sneaky, cowardly attack. But life doesn't always go as planned. Not only was Baku not an easy target, he switched into beast mode and chased them, sending them scattering like chickens in a Stephen Chow comedy. After dealing with those useless henchmen, Kotak suddenly stepped forward to apologize to Seyoon for the earlier misunderstanding. This scene left Baku standing nearby, stunned because he was impressed. Seizing the moment, Baku taught his juniors that when you apologize to friends, you should bow your head and do it with real sincerity, just like idols on social media apologizing to fans. But Seon was cold as ice, not even caring, turning his back and walking away with Juntae in such a cool way that Baku was even more impressed. Honestly, not everyone can keep up that effortlessly cool vibe. Baku went to school just like a K-pop idol. Everyone welcomed him, and wherever he went, the place became lively, greeting everyone like a showy team captain. When he walked in, students stood up and started making heart signs. It felt like they were filming a vlog. When he got to class, Gotak was there, sitting like a guru, ready to lecture Baku about not being allowed to compete. One hand up, feet tapping like a late-night chat. They argued, trading words like a rap battle. Just no beat. In the middle of their embarrassing argument, Seon and Juntae suddenly showed up like teachers ready to intervene, giving them a helpless look as if to say, "Are you grown-ups or kids?" Then they reported the troublemakers to the teacher. All four got called to the office and everyone had that "I have nothing to do with this" look, even though they were all involved. They got a thorough scolding from the discipline teacher. He lectured them so organized and strategic, it was like a life skills class. Seon tried to explain but the teacher ignored him and said, "Say one more word, I'll call your parents and pull your records." Right when things were getting tense, Baku pulled a move. He pushed Seon and Gotak's heads to apologize to the teacher, to shut those two up and stop them from arguing further. As soon as they left the discipline office, the group started apologizing, like they'd just survived a life or death ordeal. Seon said she hated her head being touched, but Baku didn't care about that boundary. He was as persistent as a street vendor. He'd get closer whenever someone said they didn't like it. He went over and ruffled Seon's hair cheerfully, like he was playing with a puppy, leaving Seon frozen for a moment, not quite sure what was even happening. All you could see in his eyes at that moment was a silent plea, "Help me, this world is just too much." That afternoon, Seon and Juntae sat together peacefully, drinking milk without being bullied anymore. Of course, Juntae was deeply moved by how peaceful life had become after Seon came to his rescue. The way he looked at Seon in that moment was like someone looking at their savior. Honestly, if Seon had said he was the light at the end of the tunnel, Juntae would have been ready to follow him for life. That evening, Seon got another lecture from his mum about fighting and all that, but he didn't really listen. He just sat there with a face like he'd switched to airplane mode. It was that painful past that made him the way he is now, closed off and silent, like a refrigerator that's been unplugged. From then on, Seon and Juntae started hanging out regularly with Gotak and Baku's group. Everyone seemed to be having a good time, laughing and joking around just like students in a school drama, except for Seon, though he didn't avoid anyone either. As for Hyoman, he was lying there all alone after getting thoroughly beaten by Baekjin. The reason? He dared to fail at proving he was good enough to join Union. Honestly, watching Hyoman get beaten up was both satisfying and a little pitiful, because he's clearly playing the most pathetic villain of all time. Just one knee to the gut and a slap to the face, and he was down for the count, from being the school boss to becoming Union's doormat in no time. After that, the whole Bakugan went to his dad's chicken shop to hang out and chat. Of course, Seon wasn't there because he needed to visit a friend. While they were there, everyone caught up on everything that had happened while Baku was away. Actually, not the whole group, only Baku got scolded by his dad for mooching off the chicken shop's money, so his allowance got docked. Suddenly the scene shifts to Seon, who's on his way to visit Suho, his old friend who's been in a coma since the first season and still hasn't woken up. While filling out the visitor form, Baku called to check in and asked if anyone was after him. But Seon stayed as cool and distant as ever, acting like he didn't need anyone's concern. But when he arrived, he unexpectedly ran into a guy named Song Yi, who's Baekjin's right-hand man. This guy didn't come to the hospital to visit anyone, he went straight in to find Seon, like he was there to deliver a blood debt or something. He dropped some hints basically saying, "Come with us if you want, whether you protect your friends or not, that's up to you." After saying that, he turned and walked away just like in a Japanese gangster movie, leaving Seon standing there looking lost, like a confused little deer. Episode 4. This episode opens with Seon following Song Yi to meet Baekjin. He had to pass through a busy entertainment spot for the tea crowd, almost as if it was meant to hide Baekjin's identity. Hi. With flashing lights and pounding music, after what felt like forever, they finally arrived. And then Song Yi left Seon to fend for himself to meet the star. When Seon opened the door and went in, Baekjin even made him wait, but with Seon's stone-cold expression, he skipped small talk and got straight to the point, warning that if he saw this guy at Suho's hospital again, he'd wipe out Baekjin's crew in one go, so they'd know what it means to get hit with karma. After that, Baekjin just gave a faint, mocking smile, as bland as soup. Seon had already given the answer to Baekjin's problem, leaving him at a loss. Baekjin demanded Seon leave Baku alone for peace, and Seon agreed. He agreed with a straight face, but his heart was pounding like a drum knowing he had just signed up to live under constant pressure. After Seon left, Baekjin sat there in silence for a while. Then Song-yi came in and started chatting with him in a warm, caring way, asking what he was thinking about, but he didn't really care. His face was as blank as a printer out of ink. Because right now, the only thing on his mind was an obsession with Woongang School. So he sent people to cause trouble at Baku's father's restaurant just to vent his frustration. Baku was doing push-ups to bulk up his shoulders when he got a call from the police saying something happened at his dad's restaurant, so he rushed over like in an action movie. When Baku met the police, he wanted his dad to apologize so things would go smoothly, but his father didn't care. Song-yi, who was there, sent Baku a message full of challenge, basically saying, "We're not just playing around anymore, we're ready to fight for real." As soon as he left, Baekjin called Baku to set up a showdown for the next day, saying it wouldn't be right by the code of the streets if they met and didn't fight. The next morning, John Seon walked into the new crew, looking all tough, and coolly announced that he had met Baekjin and decided to leave the group. He wanted the other three guys to pretend they didn't know him anymore, just to avoid any trouble. Men don't beat around the bush, so Baku nodded in agreement. Seon turned and walked away, exuding a cool, aloof vibe. Juntae dashed after him like a ninja, clutching his heart, saying he couldn't accept it, that he couldn't let Seon carry the emotional burden alone. But for someone like John Seon at a life or death crossroads, he had to act totally fine, pretending to be strong with that "I'm okay but please don't ask" attitude, as if he was the one who wanted to leave the group. That day, John Seon wandered and ran into some guys from another school. Just when he thought he was about to get punched, by luck, those guys recognized him as the dude Baekjin had warned them not to mess with. So, he was able to walk away in style, completely unscathed, not even a hair out of place. Meanwhile, as the other three were getting ready to head home, Baku suddenly lied about having a date and disappeared without a trace, leaving the other two completely baffled. Right at that moment, Dongsi's gang made their move, targeting Goktak and blocking his way. It turns out that in his dark past, Goktak had once been ganged up on by them without a chance to defend himself. But this time, instead of running away, he braced himself and told Juntae, "Run now. I'll stay behind and have a little cultural exchange with Songji." Blessed with lightning-fast legs, Juntae dashed off like the wind, escaping the two pursuers in spectacular fashion as if he were in a race to see who could make a phone call first. With no other choice, Juntae had to call Seon for help, and as soon as he made the call, Seon called back immediately, like some kind of shockwave skill, rushing over like the wind, ready to jump into the fray for the sake of brotherhood. Meanwhile, Baku quietly made his way to the amusement park to look for Baekjin. And this part is really shocking, guys. He went alone. Not a single underling followed him. It was exactly like a lone boss walking into a life or death battle, straight out of a top-tier Hollywood action movie. Baku stormed straight into Baekjin's room, smashing things left and right like a debt collector, wrecking everything in sight to vent the burning anger raging inside him. But instead of panicking, Baekjin actually switched to preaching mode, calmly sitting there and confiding that he still considered Baku his closest friend and wanted to reunite their alliance. But Baku couldn't care less. He shot back with an insult, "You're such a stupid idiot," and rejected the offer to team up again. Yet Baekjin was unfazed, like a bulletproof mask, and replied, "You're the real idiot." Then he asked, "Are you okay?" Hearing that, Baku got pissed and stormed off, but he was just worried about his friend. Who would have thought that as soon as he stepped out the door, Baekjin's gang of underlings swarmed around him like flies to shrimp paste. So Baku had to switch on his love and compassion mode, but it was really just tough love with his fists and feet. He took care of them like swatting mosquitoes, handling them himself. Meanwhile, Goktak was beaten by Song-yi, who hit him without holding back, like playing a video game on the hardest difficulty. As for Juntae, he was locked up like a chicken waiting to be cooked. It seemed like Song-yi had some kind of personal grudge against Goktak, so he just kept punching him and didn't even touch poor Juntae. Goktak was beaten and could barely stand, which made Juntae anxious watching his friend take hits. Meanwhile, Baku was still fighting like a raging bull, knocking Baekjin's henchmen down. When only two guys were left, Baekjin suddenly let Baku go, as if doing a good deed for karma. This made Baku so furious he wanted to turn back and beat him again to vent his anger. But he held back and left since his friends were in danger. He left Baekjin with a mocking grin and dashed off. At the same time, when Seon saw his friend punched in a phone video, he rushed off, running to where his buddies were being chased. While running, he bumped into two strangers who were enthusiastically commenting on his friends in that wild video. Turns out, Goktak and Juntae's group had been beaten up and filmed, and the clip was posted on TikTok, which is why they became famous. While waiting for Seon to come to the rescue, Goktak had fully recovered. But when he saw Juntae being cornered against the fence like a poor puppy, he forced himself to get up and jump back into the fight. But he was feeling the pain from the earlier hits. How could he possibly land a punch on Song-yi now? Sadly, Goktak's fate was to get a few bruising punches from Song Yi, then have his head shoved into the same corner where Juntae was already lying, barely hanging on. Once everything was done, Song Yi took out his glasses, adjusted them, and nonchalantly snapped a photo of the two guys he'd just beaten up, as if showing off a new achievement on social media. Just as Song Yi turned on a filter and snapped a photo, Seon suddenly showed up, handsome and cool as ever, not saying a word, just keeping that poker face. The moment he arrived and saw the chaotic battlefield, he didn't waste time asking questions. He just tossed his backpack down with a thud and jumped straight into a fight with Song Yi. In Seon's hand was a tiny little pen, but his hatred was as big as a rice cooker. He kept stabbing it towards Song Yi, but that guy was quick and sharp, catching it easily every time. Song Yi tossed the pen aside and even mocked our main guy, saying he fights with the pen like some kind of woman. What he meant was, you have to fight barehanded to make it cool. So the two of them charged at each other like a bunch of kids playing Arena of Valor, both out of healing potions. Song Yi played dirty and landed the first punch on Seon, knocking him down in a heap on the ground. But Seon refused to give up. He used everything within reach to fight, grabbing a potted plant to create a smokescreen that blinded the guy in red, then snapping off his glasses frame and stabbing it straight into his leg, making him yelp so loudly it was hard not to burst out laughing. Sure, Seon's punches weren't exactly powerful, but he had the brains to strategize his way through a fight. Who says students are weak? He fought like a ninja in the Asian Championships, one side trying to punch the guy stabbing his leg, the other desperately trying to stab someone's leg. Seon took off his glasses, planning to finish Song Yi for being such a smart mouth, but unfortunately, Song Yi managed to block him. Just when it seemed over, the two grabbed each other and started throwing punches wherever they could, as if they'd never get to fight again. Song Yi landed a spectacular kick on Seon, leaving him staggering like he'd just downed 3 bottles of energy drink. Seeing this, Song Yi didn't miss his chance. He landed another punch right on Seon's face. But with his two best friends struggling, Seon still managed to scramble up and keep fighting. Watching them punch each other, even I could feel my teeth ache. Seon took a full menu of punches from Song Yi, a relentless combo that left him gasping. Just when it looked like Seon was about to get back to full strength, out of nowhere, he used his gifted forehead like a sledgehammer and slammed it onto Song Yi's leg. A sudden sharp cry rang out. I bet that scream was so loud in Korea, I could hear it all the way at my house. By the end of the fight, both just collapsed and passed out right there under the open sky. It was touching and impressive to watch, like they were giving it their all, and if they couldn't win, they'd just go down swinging. The highlight was at the end, when Baku came running in with the police siren blaring, sending the bullies scattering. Seeing Seon lying limp in the wreckage, his face covered in blood, it looked like a scene from a tragic action drama. Half conscious, he mistook Baku for Shushu, and in a weak, heart-wrenching voice whispered, I just got into another fight, then passed out.